Deep in the mist-covered hills of southern China, shadows move between the trees. Heavy footsteps, the sound of snouts rooting through the soil. For centuries, this land has echoed with the presence of one of the world's most powerful and unpredictable animals, the wild boar. But today, these creatures are no longer just wild. They're part of a multi-million-dollar industry. From remote mountain villages to high-tech farms equipped with thermal cameras and automated feeding systems, China's wild boar farming industry has become one of the most surprising intersections between ancient tradition and modern agriculture. Wild boar meat, once hunted by farmers and forest dwellers, is now cultivated, processed, and exported on a scale that few outside China have ever seen. It's prized for its gamey flavor, high protein content, and cultural symbolism of strength and resilience. Yet behind this booming trade lies a fascinating balance: taming a wild species without erasing its nature, managing aggression, disease, and genetic diversity, all while meeting the growing appetite of a nation that consumes more pork than any other on Earth. So today, we're stepping inside an industry that blurs the line between wild and domestic. This is how millions of wild boars are raised and processed for meat. Inside China's wild boar farming industry. Have you ever wondered how a wild animal, once feared and hunted, became a staple of modern farming? Let's start by going back to where it all began. Long before modern farms or factories, the wild boar roamed freely across the forests and mountains of East Asia. To ancient Chinese civilizations, this animal was more than just food. It was a symbol of endurance, fertility, and raw strength. In fact, thousands of years ago, the domestic pig itself descended from the wild boar. Archaeologists have found evidence of early domestication dating back nearly 9,000 years along the Yellow River Basin. But even as pigs became a part of daily village life, wild boars continued to thrive in the forests, untamed, elusive, and deeply respected. Throughout China's history, wild boar meat was considered a delicacy reserved for emperors, hunters, and mountain tribes. Its flavor was stronger and richer than regular pork, often served during winter festivals or rituals honoring ancestors. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, China's rapid urbanization and population boom drove an enormous demand for meat. Farmers began to notice that the wild boar, strong, disease-resistant, and able to thrive in harsh environments, could hold the key to a more sustainable pork supply. And so began the hybridization era, when wild boars were selectively crossbred with domestic pigs to combine the best of both worlds, the toughness of the wild and the productivity of the farm. By the late 1980s, several provinces like Hunan, Guangxi, and Yunnan had begun developing official wild boar breeding programs. These early efforts were often experimental, small farms surrounded by electric fences, testing different feed mixes and observing animal behavior. Many failed, but others succeeded, creating stable hybrid lines that could be raised in semi-wild conditions. It was the birth of China's modern wild boar industry, a strange and ambitious idea that transformed a creature of myth into an agricultural commodity. Today, millions of these animals are raised across China's rural heartlands, no longer just hunted, but managed, tracked, and studied with scientific precision. And to truly understand how this transformation works, we need to see what happens inside these farms. From the outside, a wild boar farm in China doesn't look like your typical piggery. Instead of long metal barns and endless rows of pens, you'll often find fenced-off forest zones, rugged hillsides, and semi-natural enclosures. The goal here isn't to tame the boars completely, it's to replicate their wild environment while keeping them close enough for safe management and breeding. A typical large-scale wild boar farm can span hundreds of acres, with separate zones for breeding, feeding, and growth. Many farms are located in southern provinces like Guangxi, Hunan, and Sichuan, where the climate supports lush vegetation and access to natural streams. Inside these enclosures, wild boars live in family groups called sounders, led by dominant females. They dig, forage, and even wallow in mud, behaviors that farmers encourage rather than suppress. Feeding time is a carefully balanced ritual, a mix of corn, sweet potatoes, rice bran, and wild herbs, often supplemented with fermented feed that aids digestion and boosts immunity. Farmers walk carefully along the perimeter, using non-contact feeding systems, dropping feed through remote chutes to reduce aggression. Because make no mistake, these animals, even when farm-raised, remain wild at heart. Males are muscular, territorial, and unpredictable. That's why only trained handlers are allowed inside breeding zones, usually carrying long shields or electric poles for safety. When it comes to reproduction, the process is managed with precision. Selective breeding programs ensure the right genetic balance. Hybrids that grow faster but retain the lean, flavorful meat texture that defines wild boar pork. Some farms even use AI-assisted genetic analysis, scanning DNA samples to predict offspring traits and resistance to diseases. Once piglets are born, they stay with their mothers in in natural enclosures until they're about 2 to 3 months old, then gradually moved to controlled feeding areas where they adapt to human presence. By the time they reach 8 to 12 months, they've developed the signature lean muscle and thick skin that make wild boar meat unique. What's fascinating here isn't just how they're raised. It's the delicate balance, keeping them wild enough for quality, but domestic enough for safety. Next, we'll follow what happens after this stage, when these powerful animals enter the processing and meat production chain. The journey from farm to market begins long before the meat ever reaches a supermarket shelf. In China's wild boar industry, processing is as much about precision as it is about respect, transforming a fierce, untamed animal into a product that's safe, traceable, and high quality. Once the boars reach market weight, usually between 80 and 120 kilograms, they're transported from mountain farms to certified processing facilities. These are not chaotic or rough places. Rather, they operate under strict hygiene and animal welfare regulations. The first step is resting. The animals are given time to calm down in holding pens to reduce stress. This isn't just ethical, it directly affects meat quality. Lower stress means more tender meat and better color. Next comes stunning and humane slaughter, typically performed with electrical methods under supervision. Each carcass is then carefully cleaned, inspected, and processed in temperature-controlled rooms. It's here that the wild boar's distinct anatomy, thicker skin, leaner muscle, and darker meat becomes evident. But what makes this process different from regular pork production is the attention to preservation of flavor. Because wild boar meat has a richer, game-like taste, processors use traditional air chilling instead of water immersion, allowing the meat's natural texture to remain intact. Some facilities even incorporate smoking or slow curing methods inspired by regional cuisines. In provinces like Hunan and Guangxi, you'll find artisan-style butchers who specialize in wild boar sausages and preserved meats smoked over tea leaves, oak wood, or camphor bark, giving the meat its signature aroma. After cutting and packaging, the meat undergoes traceability testing, each batch labeled with its farm origin, health certificates, and DNA tracking. From there, it travels across China's domestic markets, from high-end restaurants in Shanghai to street markets in rural towns. But not all of it stays within China. A growing share of processed wild boar products, from jerky to premium cured cuts, are exported to Southeast Asia, where demand for exotic meats is rising rapidly. It's an intricate system, blending modern safety standards with ancient culinary tradition. Yet behind all this efficiency, one question remains: how do farmers and scientists manage to keep this industry sustainable when the very animal they're raising was once the symbol of wilderness itself? When people imagine wild boar farming, they often picture rough rural setups, muddy fields, and wooden pens. But in reality, many of China's modern wild boar farms are technological powerhouses, combining ecology, engineering, and data science to manage animals that are anything but predictable. Across regions like Hunan and Guangxi, farmers are using drone surveillance and thermal cameras to monitor boars in semi-wild enclosures. The cameras track movement patterns, feeding times, and even stress behaviors, sending real-time data to control centers. Meanwhile, automated feeding systems distribute customized rations at precise intervals, designed to replicate the boar's natural foraging rhythms. This not only improves efficiency, but reduces human-animal contact, which minimizes risk for both sides. Some experimental farms go even further. They're integrating IoT sensors into the soil and water systems, monitoring humidity, pH, and temperature to maintain ideal living conditions. Others use AI-based facial recognition, yes, for boars, to identify individuals, track health records, and predict breeding cycles with remarkable accuracy. But technology isn't just about control, it's also about sustainability. Wild boar farming, when managed well, can have a smaller environmental footprint than traditional pig farming. These animals are resilient grazers. They thrive on local vegetation, kitchen scraps, and agricultural byproducts, reducing the need for industrial feed. Their manure, rich in organic nutrients, is recycled into natural fertilizer for nearby crops, creating what's known as a closed-loop farming system. In some eco-farms, the enclosures are designed within forest restoration zones, allowing boars to help till the soil and disperse seeds as they forage, a natural collaboration between wildlife and agriculture. However, sustainability also brings challenges. Boars can still carry diseases like African swine fever, and their aggressive nature means strict biosecurity is essential. That's why most modern facilities employ double fencing, disinfection gates, and isolation zones, ensuring no contact between farm animals and wild populations. It's a fascinating paradox. The more technology we use to manage these wild creatures, the more we depend on respecting their natural instincts. And beyond the technology and sustainability lies something deeper, the economic and cultural heartbeat of why this industry matters so much to China. To understand the true scale of wild boar farming in China, you have to step into the market. Here, among the bright red banners and clouds of steam rising from hot pots, wild boar meat is more than a product. It's a story of heritage and identity. In southern provinces like Guangxi and Hunan, wild boar dishes have long been part of ethnic minority traditions, often served during weddings, New Year feasts, or harvest festivals. The meat is seen as pure, natural, and strengthening, believed in traditional Chinese medicine to boost vitality and stamina. That cultural reverence has now evolved into commercial success. According to agricultural reports, China's wild boar meat industry is valued in the hundreds of millions of dollars, employing tens of thousands of farmers across the country. What began as small, family-run ventures has expanded into large-scale cooperatives, connecting rural communities with national food distributors. For many remote villages, this shift has been transformative. Farmers who once relied on rice and maize can now earn steady income from raising boars, animals perfectly suited to their mountainous landscapes. The government supports this through poverty alleviation programs, offering breeding stock, training, and subsidies for biosecure facilities. But it's not just economics, it's pride. Many farmers see wild boar rearing as a way to preserve a link to the forest and their ancestors, even as they embrace modern technology. The boar, once a symbol of danger, has become a symbol of self-reliance. In cities, meanwhile, demand keeps growing. Wild boar meat is marketed as a premium alternative to factory-farmed pork, leaner, more flavorful, and closer to nature. Upscale restaurants feature dishes like braised wild boar belly, smoked boar ribs, and spicy Sichuan wild boar hot pot, often highlighting their traceable farm origins. Yet, as the industry grows, so does the debate. Some conservationists worry that large-scale breeding may blur genetic lines between wild and domestic pigs. Others see it as a positive, a way to relieve hunting pressure on wild populations while giving rural communities a sustainable livelihood. Either way, one thing is clear: the wild boar is no longer just an animal of myth. It's become an economic engine, one that powers families, traditions, and entire ecosystems of rural life. But as China's appetite for premium meats grows, where does the future of this unique industry lead? Will wild boar farming continue to expand or face new challenges in the era of climate change and food technology?